And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Some updates on the Waynesboro baseball scandal. We're also going to dive into a senator's awful take on social media yesterday. Mark and I had a unique article this morning about Penn State's blue band and the unique challenges they're facing this Saturday. And a couple of other things going on. Brady versus Belichick, Joe Rogan back in the news, and a bunch of stuff to wrap up the week. But before we get to
what
all
day
of
is
that, it's Friday.
I like that.
You like that,
Very
don't
cute. Never seen that movie.
You've never seen Friday?
I don't think so. I've seen Barbershop.
Okay.
I've seen Barbershop 2.
Okay. There's a Next Friday. Have you seen Next Friday?
I don't think so. And I didn't see Last Friday either.
It all rides on Chris Tucker, because some people find Chris Tucker annoying. I find him hilarious. So if you enjoy Chris Tucker, it's funny.
But worth watching.
How are you feeling
it's
today?
Ice Cube, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't he the other one? Yeah. I feel good.
Yeah.
I feel this is the world I live in. I love high school football.
Okay.
I've had a nephew that came through and played. I've been involved in a lot of broadcasting of it, so I go to a lot of high school football games now. My daughter's in the color guard at Montoursville, and my son is a freshman on the football team, so he plays in the JV games, but he doesn't play in the varsity games because he's only a freshman.
Sure.
But I'm still like, now you're in the world of you're obligated to go. And the other years, there was kind of like, well, if I didn't want to go, I didn't really have to. Now I'm kind of obligated. So you really treasure when it's a good game. And we play at Danville tonight, and it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And I love the people in sports who are like, just want to go blow people out. And when it's 28-0 in the first quarter, they're yelling, obnoxious. Woo! And those games are so awful for everyone involved. And when you get good games on, you don't want to get blown out, but blowing people out ain't all that much fun either. So when you have the close, exciting games, and so it's worth the drive. So what is it, a drive to Danville? 35, 40 minutes?
For you.
And I'm looking forward to it, because if you got a 35, 40-minute drive and you're like, we're either going to kill this team or we're going to get killed, then it's just like, this kind of ruins a Friday night. But this is fun. That's where I'm at. I'm excited.
Nice. Yeah, you look excited. You look good. You look like, is October your month? Like, what's going on right now?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
I like fall. October's good because of baseball. Baseball's coming to a climax. Football's getting going.
Yeah.
I love baseball. I love football. There's something about, like, everyone loves summer, I think. If anyone doesn't love summer, they have a miserable existence. Even like professional skiers, I think, love summer.
Okay.
But there's something about fall, the simplicity, kind of the rhythm of getting back into normal life. Because summer a lot of it is not normal.
I've told you fall's my favorite season.
It's a good time. And you have all this, there's the build, like, people like Halloween. Even if you're not a huge Halloween person, it's hard to hate Halloween. Halloween's fun.
We're definitely diving into that in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about Halloween.
But everyone looks forward to Thanksgiving.
Sure.
Everyone looks forward to Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah.
So the anticipation of the obviously helps. You get into January, not only is it the weather but like you're looking forward to spring, which is months and months away, but you don't have that holiday. It's just the fall is set up for more fun and festivities than the beginning. So I think that's one of the other reasons that fall is fun.
Yes, and just getting to the holidays. Holidays are great. Holidays are
and the look forward to it. I think that's the worst part, because you know that the bad weather's coming with it.
Yeah.
But it's not that January doesn't suck because it's so cold, in February because it's so cold and you're stuck inside. It's because there's the anticipation of what? Like summer is 6 months away.
Sure.
So, that's why I think one of the things that makes fall good. But it's October 1st. We're ready.
All right. You ready to do
October, first Friday.
It is First Friday. Are you going to First Friday?
I'm going to Danville. Going to a football game.
You're not going to First Friday before? You don't have to be in Danville until like 7.
What time's First Friday?
Hit up First Friday, then go over to Danville.
What time does it start?
I don't know. I mean, technically now, if you wanted to.
Well, it is the first Friday. Yes, it was at 1 o'clock in the morning. But no, I'll be in Danville.
Okay. So we're using this report. This is from On the Pulse from Ann Reiner. Myrtle Beach assault AG Shapiro claims conspiracy between county detective and the Williamsport principal. Over 4 years after an alleged sexual assault involving members of the Williamsport area high school baseball team during a trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a search warrant issued by the State Attorney General Josh Shapiro alleges a conspiracy involving high school principal Brandon Pardo and Lycoming County Chief Detective William Weber to cover up the incident. There's obviously more in the article, and I'm going to touch on it as we go through. Any initial thoughts, or do you want me to just kind of keep reading through some of the details here as we dive in?
Well, I'll give you like the brief summation of the bullet points of things that are important. It was a baseball trip to South Carolina, and a player on the team was, hazed, however you want to say it, but the accusations of the hazing, it's not like he wasn't sleeping and they drew on his face with a marker, or they put his hand in a thing of warm water, and that like it was. Some of the allegations would classify as sexual assault.
Yes.
So what's made the whole situation murky is because it was a trip in South Carolina, the assault part of it is a South Carolina crime. And what they investigate, what they find, all that other stuff. As they come back to Pennsylvania, what makes it murky is this mandatory reporter law that all teachers, coaches, you have it, I have it, because we're coaches. So you have to report if you think something is amiss involving a minor. And it's not just sexual. It'd be physical. It'd be
it can
neglect.
Be neglect, yes. It can be a number
lots of things. So what makes this situation soap opera-ish is the Williamsport principal, who's Brandon Pardo, was on the trip. And the Williamsport athletic director, Sean McCann, was on the trip because they both had sons who were on the baseball team. So now what it's been the last 3 years of, or 4 year, whatever long it's been, is who knew what when, and did anyone who is a mandatory reporter refuse to report and try to cover up the crime? What makes it even, what makes the timing of it, why this is still going on, I should say, the Attorney General has said there was corruption between the police investigation and the school and, all that stuff. Since this started, we have had an election, and there is now a new district attorney. Ryan Gardner was not in office when that took place. So as he inherits the job, he basically comes in and says, there's no corruption of my staff here. We weren't even on the job. Right. So he kind of passed it up to the state attorney general. So now, there was fresh eyes with nobody who had any connection to it. Right. So it seems to be now an investigation that is pure, I guess, for lack of a better term. So it is bounced. It comes and goes in local media and social media. Yeah. And
I think the hardest thing for the hardest thing for the average Joe right now, whether it's me or you or anybody else in the community, the hardest thing is to decipher what they are actually looking at, because they are not actually looking at what took place in South Carolina. Mainly what this report and what they're looking at goes along with the mandated reporting. And was there a cover-up? Was there not a cover-up? Things like that. And trying to decipher those two things, because most people fall into the conversation of what took place in South Carolina, whereas this conversation, this report, is really more so about what happened once they were back in Pennsylvania.
Correct.
Okay.
There are rumors, and word on the street is, I don't say rampant because that's probably not fair, but you don't have to go far and wide to hear people who know details. They will tell you who the perpetrators were. They will tell you who held the video. There's a video of it. I know of a person who was in a meeting with just a business meeting, one-on-one, and they were talking to an adult who had a kid that went to Williamsport and said, oh yeah, my kid said they saw the video. So now, again, these are all just allegations, right, but there are a lot of the same allegations.
So the affidavit that is being reported on, actually being used to be reported on, there's also, and this is quoted, there's also evidence that Weber, Pardo, and Attorney George Lepley, who represented the juvenile male suspect number 1, communicated with each other and participated in the investigation early on. The Attorney General's warrant, which was delivered to Williamsport Area School District Superintendent Dr. Bowers and Lycoming County District Attorney Ryan Gardner, seeks data from Weber and Pardo's cell phones as well as their email contents. So that is what the main affidavit comes from and what it's for.
Because one of the questions, again, it comes to when did they know and what, I guess not only what they know, when did they know it? And there was a timeline somewhere, and I'm sure Ann covers it, it's been out there, where this happened. This is a spring break trip. So this is a spring trip, and the school has said something about nobody officially knew until later. So they want to check the phone records of the administrators on the trip and the coaches on the trip to see if they had any contact with the South Carolina police, or if they had any contact with the parent of the victim, the parent of the whatever, because obviously you go on, trips whether you're out of state or not. Your basketball team goes down to Harrisburg. You're not calling the police of Harrisburg for any reason,
Sure.
So that would be one of the questions: is there contact between the police department and any of these administrators or coaches?
So again, you can find this on NorthcentralPa.com. You can also find it on the Pulse. The article continues as well. In addition, it also requests an unredacted version of a letter written by Lepley on May 31st, 2018, that was sent to Pardo and School Athletic Director Sean McCain. The subject line of the letter reads, misconduct Myrtle Beach. So while they already have some of this material, they're basically asking for the original version unredacted so that they can see the full content of the letter that was exchanged.
Right. So, and again, when you take all the sides of it, something happened, and I don't even when you talk to the people who are kind of in the know at Williamsport, nobody debates that something happened. The question is, was it much more innocent and, kids just being stupid, or did it violate, did it go beyond, and did it go across the legal line? So what makes it interesting is, as a coach, as a parent, and you're like, I'm mandated to report this, but these are my kids, not just my kids, but these are the players on my team. These are my kids in the program. These are my kids' friends in the program. And if this does get reported, who do we cause all these problems for, and what does it do to our season? So there's an aspect of life that people try to make things go away if they can make it go away because it's simpler. And did they do that, or did they not do that? And that's the question.
Because now we're 4 years into this, essentially.
Yes.
The hardest part about this story has always been trying to talk about it where you're not speculating. Because when you're with your friends or when you're in a different room, you can talk about, well, why this, why that, all those things. So to try to talk about it without speculating is difficult. What makes it really, really unique is, unlike a typical trip where there's a lot of schools, there's a lot of times where a trip would happen. And if the athletic director and the coach and the principal and these people went on the trip, there's not a direct relation to players on the team and so there's a lot of ties, there's a lot of connections that just makes the story, it elevates the story past the original circumstance.
I just did an Eli Manning on the camera.
Did you?
As Jerry just walked in with his Carolina Panthers sweatshirt on because he's a Panther fan. And
that was good.
Can we delete that?
I don't think that's how it works. No, I don't think that's how it works. So again, if you want to read the article, you can go to NorthcentralPa.com. You can also go to On the Pulse, Ann Reiner's piece on it. And there's going to be more coming, I'm sure. There's
also speculation. Shapiro, who I guess this is total speculation, but he is going to throw his hat into the ring for governor, which has been rumored for a while. but there's a rumor that that's going to happen like next week.
Okay.
And then he is going to make his rounds throughout parts of Pennsylvania. And one of the places that he is stopping is Williamsport to address not just the Williamsport baseball scandal, but the Bill Nichols city government scandal.
Right.
And so that apparently he is going to be in the city sometime next week and address the Attorney General's findings on all the stuff that they're investigating. So, so we should know more a lot next week. I can only imagine the tenor, if you will, the mood of Williamsport High School right now.
Well, I said this to you, and again, trying to stay away from speculation. I said to you, after 4 years, there's just a lot of people that I can't imagine they have slept well, because you just don't know what's around the corner. And so after 4 years, I'm kind of done speculating. I'm curious to see what comes out of it. I'm curious to see what Shapiro decides. Like, I'm to the point after 4 years where, like, I'm kind of over the hush gossip of talking about it. And I'm, I think it's relevant to finally have some answers, and we're finally kind of moving forward with it.
Something official.
Yes. So I'm curious to see what Shapiro finds and what is actually decided.
The other thing I've always wondered about, and to throw in, I don't know if this was, if we mentioned this or not. The lead investigator, William Weber, he resigned last week.
Yes.
Now, the timing of this is almost even bad Hollywood. I think he resigned on his the anniversary of his 40th year on the job.
Okay.
So I think it was like, this is my 40th year and I'm out. It also happened to be the same day that the sealed
envelope.
Yes, I was going to say indictment, but that's not the right word. Ryan Gardner got a sealed envelope from the Attorney General, and Gardner was quoted saying, I didn't even open it yet. And then I'm getting this resignation from the lead investigator. So that's part of this soap opera aspect that comes around about this. One of the things that I'd always said was, when you're talking about high school kids, and when you're the principal or you're the athletic director, if something happens, you're a basketball coach, so your team goes on a trip. If something bad happens, you have a certain amount of clout over these kids to be like, hey, what happens stays within the team, and don't say anything, blah, 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 blah. But a couple months later, the kids graduate, and then they're off in college, or then they're off in the military, or then they're wherever. And some of the kids go away and never come back. And with each passing year, there's, whether it's something about their conscience or something about they can't tell me what to do anymore, you would think with each passing year, sooner or later, somebody who was on the trip and in the room is going to come forward and say, this is what happened. And I don't care what you do, because I live in, Toledo, or I'm on an army base in Germany, or wherever. So you can be mad, you cannot be mad. This is the truth, and the truth shall set you free. So
I think it's harder, especially like in 2021. I just think it's hard to, there was a time where you could probably pull it off, or you could probably like, hey, we're keeping this, like those times are just gone. Like it's almost, I want to make sure I say this correctly, because impressive has a positive connotation, but it's almost amazing that it's stayed in the shadows for this long. Like it's almost amazing that in 2021, starting in 2017, when there was a video and everything else, it's almost amazing that we're at this point and we still don't really have the answer, because to hide things, to hush things within a group of, like you're saying, a group of kids, I just don't. Maybe in 1995, like maybe in, but
no, I get exactly
today,
what you're saying.
I don't know. So we'll see. We'll keep you updated as we continue on. Again, NorthcentralPa.com, On the Pulse, and Reiner, if you would like to read the story for yourself. Anything else?
I was just going to say, rumor is next week, Shapiro is going to be in Williamsport, not just to talk about that, but to talk about other things. and to embolden his candidacy as well. But there's a good chance that we may have some real answers to a lot of this stuff that has been, bandied about. We may have some real answers next week.
Movie makes it sound as if you're like, I don't want to make it sound as if we're not taking it seriously, but when you start to connect some of the dots and like coincidence, uncoincidences, like it is, some of the stuff is almost unbelievable. Like even just the way you explain the envelope being handed and the step down, and even like the district attorney walking away and having to pass it off, like some of the stuff is just the coincidences and different things are out of this world.
Well, I mean, you could take,
the script would almost be unbelievable.
You could take coaches who have coached for years and years and years. And I've known lots of coaches who've had players on the team at some point through. But like, I mean, you can ask Insinger, who's been coaching at Loyola for 100 years. Have you ever had a principal's kid on the team? Have you ever had the athletic director's kid on the team, let alone at the same time?
Also too, I might be wrong about this, is the superintendent's had a son on the team as well, or am I misspeaking?
That I don't know.
There was one other.
Think so,
I believe there was one other administrator reading through it. But again, a lot of this stuff up to this point hasn't been like official. Like I have yet to see an actual baseball roster of who went on the trip. So like even some of the stuff that you've been hearing for years and years and years, sometimes it's hard to decipher what you're actually, and that's why I said after 4 years, like I just would like to get to the point where like, here is who was there, here's what happened, here's the story, here's the mandated reporting, and let's move on. Like, let's get it done and move on.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's actually just a roster, but I think this team came back and won a district championship that year. So there's all kinds of, news about this team and players on this team. Now the actual travel log of who went and who didn't, but I don't know. But yeah, it is. There's a lot of Hollywood elements of this that just naturally happen.
Yes. The next story we wanted to talk about today, the Senator Richard Blumenthal, he is of Connecticut. He was sitting in on a discussion about Facebook and Instagram, and we've talked before, and we've actually touched on this in the past week, the detrimental things that the social media platforms can cause, whether it's young kids, screen time, different things, the studies that they've had within their company and how damning it was. Yesterday, Senator Blumenthal asked a question to the Facebook safety chief, asked if they were planning to stop Finsta accounts. So for anyone who doesn't know what a Finsta account is.
Who was me until about an hour ago.
A Finsta account is a fake Instagram account, but essentially what it is you make your Instagram account, you have your public profile, which is you and your friends and family can see, but then other people will make a Finsta, which is a fake account, where maybe only certain friends can see what they're posting. So that way they can be more private. It can be a Finsta account because people want to sell a product, right? Or try to promote themselves in a way that maybe their family wouldn't support. Was that as politically correct as I can say it?
Sure.
So the question was, are you going to stop Finsta accounts? The Facebook safety officer, for about 2 minutes, tries to explain to the senator that they don't really, it's not a thing they sell. It's not a product.
Right.
It's not an account. It's not something they necessarily are in control of. The senator then interrupted and said, is it not a Finsta account not on Instagram? It's not an Apple product. It's not a Google product. It's an Instagram thing. And she says, yes, but it's not something we sell. And the senator essentially said, it's not something you plan on stopping then. And I'm just blown away. First of all, we looked up his age. He's 75. I'm blown away, that we still have senators question social media companies because they very clearly don't understand what social media companies are or what they do. The majority of them.
Well, the majority of them are old.
Let's put it this way. I don't think what I said was incorrect.
There have to be some senators who understand social media, but I get your point.
Sure, but if I get a 93% on a test, it's an A. So
I get your point.
Okay. And then the second thing about it was he almost refused to accept the fact that he didn't know what a Finsta account was, or that he was not the smartest person in the room listening to this Facebook safety officer who clearly knew more about the subject than him?
Well, yes, and this goes on to a bunch of topics. Number one, as we talked about, the arrogance of authority, and for people to believe that, like, if you are the owner of the company, no matter how big or small your company is, you are, the buck stops with you. You can hire and fire. You can do whatever you want.
Sure.
But there are thousands of topics where someone else in the office is smarter than you. But if you are too arrogant to treat them like, I know, like, we're going to talk about something, I don't know what we're talking about, but just a reminder, I'm still smarter than you.
And just to build off of what you're saying, because I don't know if you knew this or not, Blumenthal is the richest senator that we have.
I did not know that.
Yes. I believe his net worth is over 100 million. So he is like.
So you're saying arrogance just falls off of him.
What I'm implying is he may not be the smartest person in the room, but he can stand up and say, I'm the richest person in the room.
Okay.
And so maybe the way he is portrayed or the way he carries himself, I may be mistaking it for arrogance, but it certainly came off that way during this panel.
Well, this is a reminder of things, and it's the way our government works, but how often these people have to make decisions on things that they basically know nothing about. And this hit me back. My father-in-law, my ex-father-in-law, whatever, he went to Annapolis. He was a captain in the Navy. He did 30 years in the Navy, then retired. Sure. And what do you do after you're a Navy captain that went to the academy? Well, he went to Washington, and he worked. I know liaison is. I don't know. Basically, what he did was he explained military jargon to congressmen. Mm-hmm. Because he's like, when they pass this thing across and say, do you want to spend this many $100 million on this? They don't know what they're reading. So someone has to explain to them,
sure, this
is what, and he's like, and I was kind of like the Navy guy who,
right.
And so you've got these people who are voting on hundreds of millions of dollars or $1 billion things when they're getting brief explanations on it.
Right.
And this guy's trying to have an intelligent conversation about Facebook, and he doesn't even know how it works. What she should have said is the girl should have said, this is like someone calling you up and giving a fake name over the phone and then telling the phone company, are you going to put a stop to that? He would have been able to grasp that.
But here's because everything you just laid out was perfect. But what I would say is that it doesn't bother me that a senator doesn't know what a specific weapon is, because you can't possibly know everything. I'm very okay with a senator not knowing how Facebook works.
Correct.
What I'm not okay with is if a senator was in that meeting where the guy's trying to explain the military grade weaponry and they're not listening, they're acting as if they know more about the weaponry than the person explaining it to them, there's a problem. And the problem with Blumenthal the other day was he refused to act as if this safety officer may have known more about Facebook than he did. So my issue isn't it's not about misinformed senators. It's about senators who refuse to believe they're misinformed or refuse to believe that somebody else in the room may actually know something more. That's the frustration watching that.
Totally. We had this discussion the other day, and this is totally off the wall, but it kind of goes along with what we're talking about. Remember when my brother first broke into the big leagues, there was a Hispanic pitcher on the team who didn't really speak English very well. And, when a guy's getting in trouble and the pitching coach goes to the mound and he talks to the guy. And I remember one day sitting in the crowd thinking, I wonder if the pitcher understands anything that the manager's saying or the pitching coach is saying. And I talked to my brother about it. He goes, he doesn't speak English very well, but I think he understands it pretty well. Well, if you get to the point like this, you think, could you imagine calling timeout during a basketball game and talking to a guy and say, I think he knows what I said?
Sure.
So I said to him, it's like, there's all these guys that speak Spanish. Wouldn't it be more prudent to send the fourth outfielder who's not in the game today and go over to him and say, hey, go tell him trust your fastball. It's better, work ahead in the
Sure.
count. You've got this batter and the next batter. We're going to the pen then for the just whatever the message is. Wouldn't it be better to have the message delivered by a guy lower on the totem pole, but actually spoke the language, than to have the pitching coach strut out and say, I'm the pitching coach. I'm going to talk at you. You're going to nod and have no idea what I just said.
Sure.
But it's about the authority and the appearance of authority. And God forbid someone lower on the scale can do this better than me.
Yeah. And so I guess to wrap it up, my biggest fear, I feel like this is going to happen more and more often because the age of a senator is not decreasing. Like the age of a senator in the last decade or so has increased. And so the issues
and our presidents,
by the way, but the issues are not. Like the issues that we're dealing with are not the issues we dealt with 20, 30 years ago. They're completely different issues. And so you have these people that not only do they not know how some of this stuff works, but a lot of them come off as if they don't really care to listen to somebody who may know how it works or what. So it was we did the Facebook stuff about a year ago where everyone was questioning Zuckerberg. And Zuckerberg came off very arrogant, but he just had to sit there for 2.5 days and take questions from people who had no idea what they were asking.
Dude, I was on a church committee about 15 years ago. I was the youngest person on the committee by far. I mean, you can just imagine the age of church committees. And this was 15 years ago. And they were talking about, can we email everyone? And one of the women on the committee did not have email. And then went on to say how she thinks email is part of the problem of the world now. And you're just, it's just like that. So yes, I'm sure there are senators who are like, oh, Facebook, all the ills of the world are with Facebook. It's, it's not the corruption in government. It's not everything, it's that the people have a voice. And don't get me wrong, there are bad things about social media. Don't get me wrong. But how many, this guy, not only does he not know how Facebook works, he probably doesn't sit there and say, oh, I'll bet Facebook's a really cool thing that's changed the world. He probably says, well, I'm rich as hell and I never had Facebook and Facebook is stupid. And, because there's
just the idea, in 5 minutes, you asked a bad question, move on.
Or just shut up and listen.
Well, right. Just listen and just sorry, I didn't know that was how it worked. Can you tell me more? There was 10 ways to handle that in which he could have been more educated about the subject, but instead he just came off as this pompous, arrogant jerk who just refused to act as if there's no way he didn't understand it. And it was very clear he
didn't understand. So not only did he come off as pompous and arrogant, he came off as dumb.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know.
Well, and I'll say this too about adults, because we do this all the time is, again, what we had is good and what the next generation have is, I have parents all the time that joke about the kids in video games, their kids in video games. We had video games when I was a kid. You had video games when you were a kid. But I tell people the difference is when we sat in our basement playing video games, whether it was, my generation, it was Atari and I had Intellivision and there was ColecoVision before we went into Sega and all that other stuff. But when we were playing them,
right,
we were being loners who were playing them now they're playing them with all their friends.
Sure.
It's a different form of hide and seek or kickball or whatever. All their friends get together and play. It's just one is in one basement, one's in one bedroom, and one's in. So it's a different world because I'm like, no. They are hanging out with their friends. They're spending more time with their friends than we did. It's just if we were hanging out with our friends in our house, it was on the phone. They're doing it with a headset on, playing multiplayer video games, yelling at each other because you just shot me and I'm on your team and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's different, but again, my generation doesn't relate to that. We understand it, but we didn't do it.
But there's a lot of people in your generation that would listen or learn about it or would like this senator did not. And that's the frustration. This next article is a perfect example because I know very little about marching bands, very, very little. But I didn't so when we found out about Penn State Blue Band and what's been going on last year and these last 4 weeks, I didn't act as if I knew everything about marching bands. I was like, wow, this is fascinating. I understand none of this. Tell me more. Penn State Blue Band is about to play their 4th home game in 4 straight weeks, which is not complete unheard of, but it is rare. You looked up, what year was it they did 5?
In 15, I think they did 5 in a row.
So in 2015, they did 5 in a row. I looked at you and I said, I can't believe Penn State's about to have their 4th straight home game. Like, do you think the kids and stuff are just like over it? And somehow you had mentioned that, did you know the Penn State Blue Band does a different set of music and a different march for every game? And I said, no, I had no idea. Which immediately we called my cousin, and it started this snowball of kind of what they're pulling off and how impressive it is.
Well, I didn't. I'm 49. I'm almost 50, and I either learned it last year or the year before.
Okay.
That because I've been to 1,000, and we talked about high school football. I've been to 1,000 high school football games, and the band plays the same show and does the same thing every week because they're high school kids, and these major universities. I didn't know. I just assumed that Penn State, new show, new. So when they play last Sunday, now they get to basically the way that we have an article written up. We have some quotes and some pictures, and there's also a video that if you have 10 minutes to burn, click on the video link embedded in the story, and it's like a GoPro from the field. But just the difficulty of they show up Monday, they learn the music quickly because they're really talented musicians.
Yes.
And then they practice this field march, and they've got to be ready by the next week. Now, when they're away, like next week, Penn State's at Iowa, so they'll still practice a little bit, but now they have like 2 weeks to prepare, and now but at the beginning of the season, they go bang, 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 and they have to be ready.
So in a normal year, that is 4 games in a row is a challenge.
Correct.
What makes this particular Saturday kind of different, unique, pick the word you want to use, they did not play last year because of COVID. The Big Ten was originally going to scrap the season, then they kind of salvaged it, but the bands essentially said, like, we're not doing this. So this year, instead of having one class of freshmen who have never performed in Beaver Stadium, you actually have 2. So essentially, half of your band has never played in Beaver Stadium before. So week 2, when they played Ball State at home, over half the band walked out to play in front of over 100,000 people for the first time ever, which to me is like mind-blowing. Because as we learned from a couple of the people in the article, when you're a freshman, when you first go out there, you really rely on the older band players.
Right, because from the crowd, you can see obviously you hear everyone.
Right.
But if that person misses a note, you can't tell.
Yeah.
But if that person is out of line or their spacing's wrong, you can tell.
Yes.
So they are worried. But yes, so not only, and these are things you don't think of. And obviously for these high school football kids, it's the same way. They're playing high school games in front of 500 people or 1,000. Now they go to Penn State and they're playing in front of 100,000.
Right.
But for the band kids, so the quote from your cousin or your cousin's wife or whomever it is, went to a high school that didn't have a football team.
Right.
So they've been in band competitions, they've played in bands, they've played in parades, but never on a football stadium. Right. So the first time they're on a football field, they're in front of 100,000 people.
Yeah.
Then this year, week 2 is the whiteout. It's not Ohio State down the road. Well, it was the second home game. It was the third game, but their second home performance.
Yes.
So, and then they're talking about things, again, that because I'm not a band guy, you're not a band guy, that I never think about. And she's like, it's so loud during not just 100,000 people, but a whiteout. It's Auburn. It's crazy. She's like, you can't hear the drums all the time. Right. So how do you march in time when you can't hear? And that's how challenging it is. Yeah. And like I learned it last year because that's why I threw it to you. I was like, they do a different set each week. You're like, no, I didn't know that. And we started thinking, it is a neat. Just watch it, and you can feel it.
Oh yeah. You can almost feel it come through the video. So to me, like when you add in COVID and not playing last year, you add in that the band, I would imagine without knowing the actual stats, 40 to 60% of that band had never played at Beaver Stadium until 4 weeks ago. And then you add in the fact that every Monday they have to put on a different show leading up to it. And my cousin hinted at it. She said, they're probably picking some songs that they've either did in a previous year or something that is easier to kind of pick up. And same thing with the steps. I'm still blown away by this. To me, this is incredibly impressive. As a non-band person, I can't express how fascinated I was when I heard what they were up against going into this year.
Yes, and they, from a kind of a game planning standpoint,
Yeah.
they will not put in the more difficult music will be on weeks they have a week off before and they can prepare. I think she mentioned one year they did a Stevie Wonder set.
Yeah.
And that it was very complicated to play.
Yep.
So they're like, yes, right now they're probably not picking the most difficult pieces in the world, or it's something that you might have played in high school or you might have are somewhat familiar with.
Sure.
So they're not stupid about it, but it's still crazy. I mean, what a time commitment. And it's funny, you just ask these people, when you get a new piece, how long does it take you to learn your part?
Yeah.
They're like, I need to play it just a couple times.
Yeah.
So, and I guess it's the same if you're a basketball player and you're like, hey, we're going to put in this inbounds play.
Yeah.
And you watch it through twice and you got it.
Yeah.
To another person, they see 10 moving pieces.
Yeah.
And so I guess it makes sense.
From a coaching perspective, like from anybody who's ever been like the captain or the leader or coach, like in an organization or wherever it is, like if you're a football coach, you got 60 to 80 kids and you're trying to organize. And I mean, it's like as a basketball coach, one of my luckiest things about being a basketball coach is you have 15 to 18 that you're kind of trying to keep in order. And
only half of them listen.
That's right. At one point, I believe they said there's over 300 members.
I don't know if the number I heard was 325, and I don't know if that's instrument playing members or if that includes everyone.
Yes,
but still,
to be
in
charge,
a lot of people.
I mean, it's 325, and this is the other part too. Like they're not. I'm sure band members have it together. I'm sure your typical blue band member is a great person. But you're still a 19-year-old kid. Like you're still a 20-year-old kid. So to me, like just the idea of like wrangling up 300 plus adolescents, like 300 plus people that like aren't old enough to buy a beer and like organizing them and getting them on the same page and literally getting them to step in line together, literally. Like to me, the whole thing is just fascinating, especially when you throw in they didn't play last year. And especially more than anything else, you look to the right of you and you look to the left of you, and there's a good chance that it's their first time too. So it's not like the majority of the time when you turn to your right, there's somebody there who's looking at you and being like, hey, I've done this before, like everything. I mean, there's a good chance they're looking at you like, what are we doing? Like, what are we getting into? Like, how do we? So I'm blown away and beyond impressed by this.
It is a neat story. It really is. So it's on, we put it up this morning and, so go through even if you don't read a word of the article, which is brilliantly written, by the way, go find the link to, it's like 10 minutes. And they did a bunch of colleges, but one of them is at Beaver Stadium. And you just see how loud it is and the energy that's around it. And I think, wasn't it taken from the whiteout of the Ohio State game, the blocked field goal Ohio State game?
It's the one they lost by 1 to Ohio State.
Ah, okay.
But it's same, I mean, whiteout Ohio State. I mean, it's absolutely. I said when we called Eric Higbee, who was a member of the Blue Band, I said, when you watch the video, it's one of the only times in my life where I've watched a video and you almost feel the vibration through the video of like the stadium. Like it's a weird feeling. Like you almost feel like you're shaking with the crowd. And I've never experienced that.
Have you ever been in did you ever see The Revenant?
Yeah.
I felt cold watching The Revenant.
Yeah.
Because it just
the way they
snowed and the environment that he was in was just, so it's the same feel. It's like you're in a movie.
Yeah.
And it's neat. It's really neat.
Really neat.
And I'm sure that they will be the fans and the players after Penn State beats Indiana, because they're going to beat Indiana. And that sets up a huge game next week against Iowa, which we'll talk about next week. But as happy as those people are, the band kids are going to be happy that they get a week off.
They have to be. I don't know.
They do.
I don't know if I would move Sunday if I were one of them.
Let's be honest. You don't move on a lot of Sundays anyway.
A lot of Sundays? No, I do not. That is the day of rest, as they say. Some other things to wrap up. Brady Belichick coming up here. This is like not a hot take. I don't know if this game is as big as people think.
Oh.
I get I understand like the drama of it. Let me put it to you this way. The off the field is way more fascinating than the on the field.
Well, sure.
Way more.
Sure.
And so this is what I think is going to happen.
But that's what the Super Bowl is the same way.
It's still this is what I'm saying. For all the talk and all the debate and everything else, which I love. Like, don't get me wrong. I would love nothing more than a good debate and back and forth. What's going to happen, though, is once the football snapped to the final buzzer, it's going to be extremely disappointing. It's not going to be that great.
You don't think?
I don't. I think the game itself is going to be everything leading up to it is merited. The conversation's worthwhile. Like their relationship, him setting the record, his place in history, like what are the Patriots doing now? Like all of that's fantastic. But the actual like between the lines game, I think is like, it's not that fascinating. It's not that great. That's my hot take on it.
What happens? This is what it's all about. Because for all you, not only is Brady playing Belichick, he's going back to New England.
I get it.
Here's the question of the multiple list of questions I have. What's the crowd reaction? Do they boo or do they cheer?
But that's not the game.
I get it.
That's part of what I'm describing.
I understand that. But that's part of what makes the show.
Yes, but that's all.
It is must-see TV.
You literally just helped me prove my point. Because what I'm describing to you is the show beforehand. When LeBron James came back to Cleveland, no one remembers the game. No one actually remembers what happened from the jump ball to the ending buzzer. Everyone remembers him doing the powder thing still and the fans booing and all that because that's part of the spectacle beforehand. I agree with you. When they announce his name, do people cheer? Do people boo?
And that's my question to you. Do they?
I think I've said this before. I think the fans of New England are more Brady fans right now than Patriot fans.
Why?
Because I think there's this idea.
Because the Patriots are 1-2 and they're not very good.
Correct. I don't disagree with that.
Do you think last year in the Super Bowl, Patriot fans were rooting for Brady or rooting against him?
No, I think they were rooting for Brady. I think the majority of New England fans were rooting for Brady.
I disagree.
Why?
Well, no, hold on. Let me think about that. I think you may be right.
I am right.
Because you pulled all the New England fans. Because Brady didn't say, screw you, I'm leaving. Right. Brady wanted to say and was pretty much forced out. Yeah. So
there's not a lot of animosity in New England right now towards Tom Brady.
How about the animosity then towards Bill Belichick? What happens if Brady comes back and they win 38-13?
They're going to.
Well, I mean, they might not, but if they and they're coming off a loss, which is a bad time for New England too.
Yes.
What do you with each passing Brady win, a little bit of luster comes off the Belichick is the greatest coach ever star.
Sure.
So if this guy who he clearly doesn't like and clearly didn't want, and he was like, and to give Belichick a pass here, Brady is 75 years old. Sure. So there is an aspect of we have to look to the future. Brady kept saying, no, I'm going to play forever. And they kind of laughed it off. And Brady goes and wins the Super Bowl, and he is playing forever.
Sure.
But I do get why Belichick at some point wanted to look to the future. But I mean, you can't tell me that this isn't the biggest regular season game of Tom Brady's career.
Oh, I think it's one of. I just would say people are acting like this is the game.
It is.
And I disagree. I think once the ball is snapped, it's going to be a very ordinary game. I don't.
Well, they're all ordinary games. The Super Bowl is an ordinary game.
No, it's not.
There's third downs and threes, and there's pass interference, and there's.
You're missing the point of it because the idea of it is like the Super Bowl. There's a value. There's something at stake. There's something. The stakes here aren't that high, and this is why. He's going to break the record. He already.
Oh, we forgot that. He needs like 80 yards to break the all-time career passing record.
So he's going to break the record. He's going to break it.
Right.
It's happening. He already won a Super Bowl without Belichick.
Right.
There's no actual like conference division record. There's very little from like a standings point that this game actually matters.
But to the Belichick, you're looking at it from the Brady side. From the Belichick side, I think this game is huge. If he gets stomped.
And if you live outside of New England, I don't think you really care. I don't think you really care.
The ratings for this game are going to be through the roof.
Because people are bored and because the buildup has exceeded what the actual product of the game is going to be.
But everything builds up the actual product. The Academy Awards, the buildup bring it over.
Well, no, because you still see, it depends what year. There are years where you are correct and there are years where you aren't because the winner matters. Like there's competitive races. Is so-and-so finally going to win one? Like, so yes, there's years where it's a dud class and people don't care and the movies weren't as good. But there's other years where it really does matter. All I'm saying is when you look at the build-up for this game, and they do it every year for the Super Bowl, there's other times where like QB-A and QB-B are like, I'm just saying when you really look at this one, the buildup is not going to be worth the actual game itself.
I think it is. And obviously, it's just a regular season game.
What's going to happen that we don't know? He's going to break the record. He's already successful without Belichick. Belichick is already struggling without him. We already know the answers to all of the questions being asked before the game. The only thing we don't know is the final score of this game. It is a beyond ordinary game compared to what it is being sold as. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I get that, but that's like saying a guy and his new girlfriend are going to a party. Okay, they've been to 100 parties. What's the big deal? Well, because this is the first party that he's ever going to where his ex-wife is there with her new boyfriend. And you're like, well, what's the big deal?
But
it's just another party.
But I know they're going home together.
I get it.
Okay,
but
so I already know the outcome. I already know the outcome.
It's still a different dynamic because you've got the exes in a room at a party for the first time ever.
And I would be the friend saying to everybody else, you guys are overblowing this. Because at the end of the night, he's not going back to her. He's going home with her, and it is what it is.
But there's a
so that's all I'm saying.
There's a tension in the room that doesn't exist any other time.
But then once you're at the party, you know what? It's a party.
Correct.
There you go.
But there's still drama.
Thank you for your analogy. It helped my point.
No, it did not.
Much.
It
really helped. I appreciate it.
This is every scenario. You're just like, it's not as big of a deal as you think.
Thank you.
You're wrong. It is This is as you would be hard pressed to find a regular season NFL football game that had this much Hollywood drama build up to it than Brady going back home. He is not the prodigal son who ran away. He is the champion son that was pushed out.
Yes.
And now he's coming back with more championships, giving the Eli Manning.
Yes. The best, I forget where I heard this.
And Gronk's coming with him.
The best dramas, and I wish I could remember who said this. The best dramas are not the ones in which you know the questions beforehand. They're the ones in which you don't know the answers before you start. And all I'm saying is that with this football game, I already know a lot of the answers before the game starts.
Then you are going to be rich on Monday.
I'm not. The only thing I don't know is the score. But I know he's going to break the record. I know Belichick is struggling. And I know Tom Brady's already succeeding in Tampa Bay. I don't what other things do I need to know?
I get all that.
I have the answers already.
Here, I get all that. And you know that you're coming to the party with your girlfriend and your ex-wife is coming to the party with her boyfriend. And you know that. But there's a lot of other drama. Are they cordial? Are they nice? You know what? It's who sides with who? Who's afraid to try? There's drama. There's going to be fun.
Drama.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot more fun than you think.
Joe Rogan, back in the news again. We were talking about it a little bit. Have you ever watched Joe Rogan? Like, do you have
This is my son is an MMA addict.
Oh, I forgot about that connection.
So every now and then I get my son will jam his phone in my face and say, okay. He jams his phone in my face, says, here, watch this. So Joe Rogan just said this. Okay. So I've never gone out of my way to watch Joe, but miraculously Joe comes out of his way to get in my face.
I forgot about the whole MMA connection. Did you ever watch Fear Factor? Or have you ever done a stand-up or his podcast or any of that? So your real relationship to him then is through MMA.
It's through fighting.
The MMA stuff. So he's come out. He's been in the news lately. He tested positive for COVID a couple of weeks ago. Some different things. Fox News just had this thing where Howard Stern had called out Rogan for basically pushing false information about COVID and the vaccine. David Portnoy of Barstool came out on Fox News and essentially said Stern calling out Rogan for somebody is eventually like him yelling at his younger self in this whole connection. Rogan's biggest thing right now and what people are getting on him for is he's not anti-vaccine. He is extremely pro-choice. And his biggest thing now more than anything else is he feels the American public is being lied to about health because nobody wants to actually talk about personal responsibility in your own physical health and how much that plays into, yes, you're still going to get COVID if you don't get vaccinated. You might still get COVID if you are vaccinated. But the idea of whether or not you're on a ventilator should not necessarily be dependent on vaccination. It should be dependent on, are you physically healthy or not? Do you wake up every morning and do you do some cardio? Do you do your crunches? He said that can keep you off of a ventilator just as much as a vaccination can. And he is vaccinated, by the way. Like, he's not like anti-vaccine, but his whole point is like, the way I'm being pushed to be vaccinated, I and other people of our society should be just as pushed to maintain a healthy lifestyle and to be cardiovascularly healthy.
But, and I don't disagree with that, but if you're the government, you know people aren't going to do that, so it's easier to give them a vaccine.
Is it that, let me ask you this, because I actually thought about that. Is it that people won't do that? Or is it that people are pushed and driven to the point of like when you drive downtown, I love McDonald's. You know why?
But
you know what I've noticed is if I don't drive by McDonald's, you know what I never say I want to get? McDonald's.
Really?
Never.
You know why you like McDonald's?
Why?
Because it's delicious.
It's very tasty. But the point, his whole thing is kind of like, you kind of drive towards what you're pushed towards. And so if you live in a society and an economy and a government in which like you're constantly kind of driven towards fast food or soda or whatever it is. And again, I love these things. Like, I'm not pointing the finger at other people. I drink more soda than I think is humanly possible. But his point is like, I really only eat some of the stuff or drink some of the stuff because it is a constant barrage in my face through my day to day. And so his whole concept is like, you know what you never see an advertisement for? Lettuce. Like, you know what you never see? He's like, you know what you never see? Like, when he's like a banana. He's like, you just never, and there's this concept of kind of like, why isn't that pushed or why isn't that? And I know why. It's not as tasty. Like, I get conceptually, I understand.
You don't think lettuce is delicious?
I don't think lettuce. You got to put a lot of stuff on lettuce to make it tasty. So he is kind of back in the news because he is very polarizing in the sense of people are either very much applauding it or people are very much on the back end of it. And we talk a lot before, like thinking out loud, sitting on the fence, not really sure. I kind of see both sides of people's takes on Joe Rogan right now.
Sure. And that's, again, you could get into the whole psychology of not just in physical health, but in all aspects of the world. It seems like the more we have as people and the more knowledge we have, it's not making us healthier. It's not making us happier. It's not making us more intelligent. So it's like all these things are provided. It's just how do you use them? Right. And there's lots of people that just in especially in certain aspects, most of us are really good in certain aspects of our life and are lacking in other aspects of our life. And It's mostly the ones we don't like. Yeah. We do what we like and we don't do what we don't like. So, I mean, there's valid points.
This is the only aspect of it that I can't really like wrap my head around it. Bill Maher kind of said the same thing. Joe Rogan has come out and said the same thing about just like your physical health and how if there's anything that is underplayed, I don't want to say we're being lied to about it, but if there's anything that's underplayed, it's the value of your own physical health, like having your body prepared to take on sickness, having your body prepared to be healthy. And I never thought we would live in a world or a society where your take on positive health could be viewed as negative. That part is very hard for me to wrap my head around because really like Mars and Rogan's point and a lot of other people's point is like they're not anti-vaccine. They are just simply saying that a lot of this could be curbed if we took responsibility for our own health. And the backlash to that is like, that's the one piece of it that I don't get that part.
Well, it's just like everything, that a global pandemic became what political party are you with?
But the difference though is like there's such a positive aspect to being healthy.
No, and there are no negative aspects. I'm totally with
so even though while your analogy is not completely off, that's the part of it that I think is different.
No, I know what you're saying. It's like it would be like telling someone to get a good night's sleep, and you're the bad guy for telling someone to get a good night's sleep.
Kind of.
No,
yes.
I'm with you.
That part of it is really, really dumbfounding for me. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, he's far from being out of the news. He has, I believe, the largest deal with Spotify out of any creator, content creator.
But he doesn't want to be out of the news. This is great for him.
It probably is great for him that he's this controversial.
He does really well in the MMA, by the way.
I believe he's great. I've never seen him do MMA, but I listen to his podcast depending on who the guest is, if I'm interested in the topic. And he's not even like, he's so curious. Like he doesn't ask like these great, well-structured questions, but he brings up things that I would want to bring up because he's a normal Joe.
He's a normal Joe that's no dummy.
That's curious.
He is no dummy.
He's very, very curious. So there have literally been times where I've listened to him interview somebody and I'll be like, I wonder why, da-da-da-da. And then 10 seconds later, he like spews out some form of what I was hearing. And I'm like, that's why he's popular. Like that's why he's good at this.
And as we just talked about earlier with senators, he does it while coming across like he's just one of us.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with that. I really, really do.
No, he's good. You should. I'm telling you, you would like MMA.
I might. It's funny you say that. He comes off as one of us because he's everywhere. And like you,
and he's not broke.
No, because like you look at the podcast, the MMA, the social media stuff, the Fear Factor stuff he did before, the stand-up comedy. He's been in sitcoms. The fact that he's been doing all of this for 25, 30 years now, and somehow he still comes off like the average person would say. The average person who likes Joe Rogan would say, "I like Joe Rogan because he seems like a normal guy." And that's incredible that he's pulled that off after what he's done the last 25
Well, just think,
years.
it's like with Barkley. If your shtick is just you, how easy is that to play?
If your brand is yourself.
Barkley's not acting.
A lot easier.
Barkley just sits down in the studio and starts talking and tells which team's terrible. And it just plays. So he doesn't have to act.
No, it's true. It's very, very true. Before we wrap up today on this Friday, anything else you want to talk about?
Big win for Penn State, which sets up next week. Notre Dame and Cincinnati is
a big
enormous this weekend.
Yeah.
I think Cincinnati's 7, Notre Dame might be 9.
Yeah.
Like, if Cincinnati wins this, they're going to have a case for like, we're one of the Final Four. We need to be in the playoff. And if Notre Dame wins this, they just knocked off a top 10 team, and all those early seasons are a distant memory.
Remember I said to you the other day, 3 of the spots are locked. Like it's a done deal.
Yeah, who'd you tell me? Georgia, Alabama, and Oregon. Yes. And you're wrong.
Anyway, I could have been wrong. It might be 4, and the 4th spot is split between Notre Dame and Cincinnati.
No.
You don't think so?
No.
I think it's going to be really hard for a Big Ten team to get in. I do. I think it's going to be really, really hard.
Well,
if you're the Big Ten right now, you need somebody else to mess up. I don't think the Big Ten's really.
Look at like Ohio. Iowa's 4 and Penn State's 5.
But look who. Okay, but when you Penn State, Iowa, Michigan State, Michigan, and you still have Ohio State at 3-1, what I would say to you is, one of them have to run the table in order to probably get in. And it's going to be really hard for them to run the table.
I think Iowa.
Really, really hard.
I mean, hold on. Let me pull this up.
No, we don't want to pull this up.
I think Iowa doesn't play Ohio State. I think they don't play. Here we go. Iowa this week. Oh, they're tonight. Iowa's tonight.
Okay.
At Maryland. Friday night on the road. Those are interesting.
Okay.
But like when you look at Penn State's tough schedule, they already beat Wisconsin at Wisconsin. They already beat Auburn at home. So how good are Michigan and Michigan State? We'll see. Penn State has to go to Iowa and to Ohio State, and then they have to win a Big Ten championship. I do get all that. It's certainly, so here's Iowa. They have Penn State, and then they have no ranked teams the rest of the way. They have Maryland tonight, then they have Penn State at home. Then they have Purdue, Wisconsin, Northwestern, Minnesota, Illinois, and Nebraska. So if they beat Penn State,
they still have to go to the Big Ten championship.
They can run the table all the way to the Big Ten championship. But who's in the Ohio State's not. Ohio State's beatable this year. If they already beat Penn State's beatable this year.
Listen,
don't tell me Michigan and Michigan State.
But this is what I'm saying to you.
They need 2 wins.
If Iowa goes to the Big Ten championship and loses, I don't think they get into the playoff. Not if Oregon's undefeated, not if you have Georgia and Alabama, and not if you got Notre Dame or Cincinnati undefeated. Like, I don't think a one-loss Big Ten loser gets in. So, like,
you keep thinking Oregon is not going undefeated.
Oregon is going
Oregon is not going undefeated.
Here's some sad news. The United States just declared that the Ivory-Billed woodpecker is extinct. So I don't know how many different species of woodpecker we have, but the Ivory-Billed is done. And do you know the Ivory-Billed woodpecker?
Of course.
I'm about to pull up a picture of it. Do you really? It's the one that, oh my God, Woody Woodpecker.
Woody Woodpecker was the Ivory-Billed?
Yeah, because it has the red fan on the top. That's what it was like based off of.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No, I did not. If Woody would have gone straight to the police, none of this would have ever happened.
After spending years and millions of dollars searching, the U.S. has given up on locating 23 birds, fish, and other species, declaring them extinct, including the Ivory-Billed woodpecker.
Have we given up searching for Brian Laundrie and just let dog find him?
I'm just assuming dog's taking care of it. Is that not what you're doing?
And I'm good with that. And really, once dog finds him, he can really do whatever he wants for all I care.
You don't seem as upset about this woodpecker thing.
I mean, in the reality species, how many different, I say strands, how many different kinds of woodpeckers are there?
It's a great question. I don't know.
Because
I'd have to look it up.
If there's I wondered that once when I was at this cabin, when you look at people and there's 6 billion people in the world, and you've got
there's more than 300 if that makes you feel better.
Okay, so here we go. So you've got white people, black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, and then when you look at how many different races of people there are, if you take away the countries, there aren't really that many, but we have 4,000 version of trout. Doesn't that?
Well, the difference, okay, so the difference then though would be like if you look at Caucasians, the difference would be the way people know what a woodpecker is, but when you have Caucasians, there's Williams and there's Everett's and there's Messinas and there's that's essentially what the 300 different species of woodpecker.
No, it would be like if you had blonde white guy, you have dark-haired white guy, you have red-haired white.
I'm so confused.
It's all about the appearance.
So
that's the difference of trout and woodpeckers.
Just to clarify, you think that the way we break down animals species is different from the way we break down human species.
Yes.
I think I disagree. I'm not smart enough to decide
when you fill out a Scantron form,
yes,
and they say, are you Caucasian, black, Hispanic, blah, 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 whatever, other, there's 5 or 6 choices. If you were a woodpecker, there would be 300 choices.
But don't you think we as a society dumb some of that down?
Obviously, we don't. We're the ones that named the woodpeckers. We made it more complicated than we needed to.
How many species of bear do you think? By the way, if someone knows the answer to this, please comment. How many species of bear do you think there are?
Black, brown, grizzly, polar.
You're doing good.
Kodiak. Is a Kodiak a form of grizzly?
I think Kodiak is a brown bear. There's 8 species of bear.
Panda.
Okay, yes. So there's 8 species of bear. So I guess
Chicago.
So what you're implying is we are either chopping down species of birds and insects and other animals too much, or I'm trying to justify you not feeling as bad.
Somebody got a job and their job was name the woodpeckers, and they tried to drag out their job longer. Instead of naming 10 of them, they named 300 of them.
You don't think the same thing, though? Why didn't the bear guy do it? He didn't value his job as much as the woodpecker guy?
Because the bear guy obviously had better things to do.
Is that what was going? He was too busy running? Is that what was happening? So anyway, the ivory-billed woodpecker is extinct, along with locating 23 other birds, fish, and other species. Yeah, I'm sad. Not as sad as you, but it's a bummer.
There's 299 other species, and woody woodpecker's still with it. If you know, like it's always sad to hear the extinctions, but when you know, like in the animal
can I give
kingdom,
a theory?
Hold on, in the animal kingdom, how many different species go extinct all the time?
So can I give a theory?
Go ahead.
So a bear is a larger mammal as opposed to a bird. There is this idea of like eventually you just kind of whittle it down to who makes it and who doesn't. Because I'm sure there was a time where there was more than 8 bear species. Just like I'm sure
and they didn't survive, is what you're saying?
Yes.
I could be. I'm going to go with Michael.
I would imagine that the larger the species is, like the larger structure, regardless of if it's a fish or bird or whatever, the less species there are. Whereas the smaller the subject is, the more species there are. Think about how many species of insect there are versus how many species of whale or how many species of elephant or how many species of bear. I think I'm onto something there. And by onto something, I mean, I think I naturally figured out something that other people smarter than me have known for years and years.
Well, and I get what you're saying, but just if you take a person, if we are in the little ant farm and there are people above watching us, and they take we have, like I said, we have white people, we have black people, we have Hispanic people.
I don't know why you keep using humans as the example.
Because this is my point. So we'll take a black guy who is 6'11", a tall, skinny black guy, and you take another black guy who's 5'4", 270 pounds.
Okay.
So you get a tall, skinny guy and a round guy.
Okay.
If in nature, if someone else was named, they would not just say, "Oh, black guy, black guy." They would give different names because that's what we've done with all these creatures. We're like, oh, this bird looks different, so this bird has to be named different than this bird. That's why there's 300 sections of woodpecker.
But I mean, I guess the different subspecies different because we do that in different ways with like occupations and different so I don't know. I mean, we do subset our species down.
In an occupation. Yes, we have linemen, we have running backs, we have wide receivers.
I was using occupation as an example. There are thousands of subsets within our species.
Correct.
But do we view those as subsets of species? No, we view it as occupation or size or weight or race or gender or like the point I'm making is there's lots of different subsets. I'm not smart enough to know how we subset the species of woodpecker. I don't know what differentiates one from the other. Because I'm assuming it's not just looks.
Enough that there's 300 different.
I'm assuming it's not just looks or any. There must be a criteria scientifically that they use to decide this is how we're going to break down the species. And what I'm saying is whatever that criteria is, it must be easier to do so when the stature of the subject is smaller versus the stature of the subject being larger.
I get it. But you get if there's a woodpecker and he's got whatever red hair, and then you got a woodpecker that has white hair, they're going to have different names. We are going to break those up. But you take a guy who's got brown hair and you take a guy who has blonde hair, they're just still white guys. They don't have different names.
Jim and Todd.
Well,
I'm not really sure. So anyway, there's lots of subsets. That was the dumbest, dumbest conversation we've ever had. We have hit a new low/high on the Midday show.
Thinking out loud, buddy.
Okay. Anything else before we head out?
No, I think after the football game tonight, I'm going to come home and try to find Friday and watch it because you said it's good.
It's worth watching one time. It's got to be 20 years. I mean, it's old now. I mean, it's 20,
you got to watch
25 years old.
You got to watch Philadelphia.
I'll watch Philadelphia. I'll watch Philadelphia. You watch Friday. Okay. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show today. Thank you to all of our sponsors. And be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news.
Baseball, great weekend. Enjoy it. We'll see who's in the playoffs. We'll talk about it Monday.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Thanks for watching the Midday Show.
See ya.